Say that hey, I'm from the school, and so they give it back to them. So, and I do see he certainly as for the school as any that I know. So I would like to certainly give back to UC. So if we're proud to be in your hey, we will money this right. It's whatever we can do. It can be your time, it can be your resources. It can be whatever you can do to help out. Help make it a better college. For the
Insight is also a global strategic supplier for GE Healthcare, ABB, Low Voltage Motors Division, Bosch, Power Tools, and so on. Hema, you've chosen to go into a field people would consider a male-dominated area. So, and you've made it. So, can you just quickly tell us what kind of challenges you would have faced during this journey, any risks that you took, and specific to making it as a small-scale industry that you've set up independently? Could you give us a brief insight into the journey you've undertaken?
Good morning to all of you. I would like to go back to my memory lane, down to my schooling days, where I think the overall personality development happened from my schooling days. The school was named as my school, and it was a very small school, but the teachers were really good, and they were very supportive and encouraging. And more so because my mother had some grades. She was a very good musician, but she did not have much encouragement in the home, and she wanted to see me something different. Like I got into dancing, and I performed I think till my PG days, till I went to Bombay. I was performing. It was a parallel profession, and it was my passion also. I took up dancing from the age of 6 years, and I went on, and I think that is where you get exposed to the environment, and any field you take up, you can excel. That is what I feel. And when I took my exams after PU, I got a seat in medical and also in engineering. And being with a family of mechanical engineers, my mother, because I was the only daughter, she wanted me to get into a medicine field. But I did not have passion for medicine at all. When I went into the PU lab at NMKRB, I remember that I cut a cockroach. It was not a dissection. I literally cut all its legs and other things. I knew I would not be a successful doctor. And that is why I went into engineering, because that was my passion. And mechanical stream was the allocation which happened when I got the seat. It so happened that we were 15 girls who went into that particular batch of mechanical, and there was no looking back after that. We were so united, and all 15 of us were so close, and we never thought, okay, mechanical is going to be a tough job. Because only foundry, I feel only foundry where you have to do that smithing, and that all of you do. Even it was a general course which all of us take up. And after second year, there's nothing like mechanical is different, electrical is different. It's more of design, planning, drafting, and you're an engineer. You're not a worksman. So being a lady, I didn't face anything till I completed my engineering. And when I got into after engineering, I got into NAL, where we did this internship training. And it so happened one of my friends, she wanted to apply to this MTech course at Government Toolroom and Training Center that is into tool engineering. Both of us went. I think I submitted a DD at the last moment. I got the interview, and I did go to for the interview, and I found there's only one lady who took up the PG course along with me. It is Radhika. And we were the only two women at that point of time to do the tool engineering course. It was an MTech in tool engineering. And there were about another 31 boys. And it so happened that we wanted to do something different even at that point of time. Both of us were like-minded, and the strengths and weaknesses of each of us, we tried to bring it together and we wanted to go forward. But it so happened I got married, she was also married, I went off to Bombay because my husband was in Bombay, and when I came back after 3 years, worked for a government tool room and training center. We worked as assistant executive engineers in the CAD/CAM department. We used to work a lot. We could see the differences between people working in the government environment. People who work keep working. The people who don't work, they're fine. They come at 9 o'clock, punch out at 5:30. But though we were women and we had families, I had a kid, at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the night, when there was a problem on the CNC machine, we used to run there and see what's happening. And that was a kind of involvement we had. What I want to tell you and make you aware is, see, if you want to do something, you want to excel in a particular field, be involved. And identify the opportunities, any particular opportunities. That is where I think we got into this particular company also, myself and Radhika together, we ventured into this particular small scale industry. There was a company who were into CAD/CAM software selling, and they said there is no training center in whole of Karnataka who can give CAD and CAM training, and you have vast knowledge, so why don't you do it? So that was a point where we also identified that opportunity, and we started in a very, very modest way in my house with 3 computers borrowed from my brother and people around. And that is the start off. And as Uma also shared, the first loan which we took for the small investment into the licensed software was about 3.5 lakhs, and I know it was a hard task trying to get money from people because we are all first generation entrepreneurs, leaving the government job, being an assistant executive engineer. I think it was not much, but I could say there was a lot of encouragement from my husband. So he told, you want to do it? Go ahead and do it. That's all. So don't look back. And he was very supportive. And from there it started, our journey started, and we are about 10-year-old company. And one major setback I had when I went to Bombay, that was my first job, campus interview at Godrej Tool Room, I was not selected. Though I had my merit, they said you are a woman and we cannot put you in the tool room because there are 3 shifts and we cannot accommodate you in 3 shifts because there is a government legacy which avoids you from working 2nd shift and 3rd shift. So there could be some limitations taking you in that. But still I wanted to be in my tooling line, and that is where we started off with this particular journey into tooling. We were only into engineering services for almost 3 years, and then we entered into full-fledged manufacturing. We have multiple CNC machines and various machinery to support the tooling activity, and there is no looking back.
Do you think there were any advantages you had as a woman entrepreneur in this field?
Yes. Once you perform and identify yourself that you can do it, certainly there's an advantage. People say, oh, you are in mechanical and you are doing such a good, wonderful job. Let me give you this opportunity, take it up, and if in case once you prove it, they know that they can depend on you better than other people who are men who are running an industry, because they know we are committed to work and we could deliver as per their requirements. This is an advantage.
Thank you. The next panelist, Pavitra Ratna Shirodkar, is also an entrepreneur with an engineering background. She has moved from mechanical engineering again, UBC 1993, Pavitra? Yeah. To embedded testing, that is electronics, and then went on to do telecom training. She has envisioned that India's tremendous growth in telecommunication and networking field has created the requirement and market for telecom training in India earlier, and she stepped into that field, right honest. Recognizing this trend, she's been evaluating potential partners and quickly realized that Litho Telecom Essentials was the most comprehensive learning system they could find. Recently, Litho Telecom was awarded the prestigious contract. You'll have to tell us about that contract, Pavitra. I can even give it to me. And after 6 long months of procedure with the tender process at European Commission, and at Apex Test Technologies, her team was instrumental in securing the first overseas clients such as Lockheed Martin of the US. She's been successful in identifying and procuring a test software which reduced production time from 10 man-hours to a matter of a few minutes. This and other such activities have considerably improved the process and made them more efficient. Pavitra, when you think about your background and how you have moved from one to the other field, how do you feel your varied experiences? How have they impacted your career? How have they given you additional advantage in doing what you do today?
Thanks, Joyce, and good morning, everybody. I think to answer your question directly, like co-panelists said, family background, encouragement, and the feeling that you can do anything is very important. If you are not differentiated, that gives you a lot of strength of mind, which I really thank my parents. My mother is here today, who is a woman entrepreneur herself and has been a mother by week. Yeah. One of the key things that I have learned in my childhood is you are not different just because you are a girl. And you need to follow your dream. It doesn't matter how different it is from others. If you have that belief in yourself, that is very important, confidence. You can just go about doing anything, like they have related. It can be any field you can go. You need to be excellent in your job. That is what finally matters. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you should excel in that and believe in yourself. These two things are very important. So it doesn't matter that I'm a mechanical engineer, and that is where I started. I want to be involved in my father's tooling company. And 2 years after that, I started my helping my husband in embedded testing. And 2 years ago, I identified the opportunity that telecom training is a skill gap that is required today to be filled as an opportunity as a business. So I'm moving to telecom. So a frequently asked question is, as a mechanical engineer, how did you move into these various fields? For me, the business of technology has been a passion. I'm not in awe of it. So if you devote, dedicate, that is very important. Dedication is very important. You need to go to the depth of it. And being superficial will never help. You need to put in your heart. There is no substitute for hard work. And if you are ready to put in the midnight hours, burn the midnight hours, you can excel in anything. You need to have that confidence in yourself. And my experiences as an entrepreneur are similar to what you say. You start with modest background, with modest investment. And it's like, the famous this thing they say about a bee. The scientists say that aerodynamically it is not supposed to fly, but the bee does not know it. So if somebody says you are a mechanical engineer, how can you do telecom training? You don't know, you saw this opportunity, you just want to go do it, follow your dream, you can do it. And that would also be my advice to young engineers there. Believe in it, do it, you can. Today it's much more easier and possible to do this. You are much more, the society is also much more open to it. And with the various tools that you have today, whether it's in your kitchen or whether it's emailing or it's unified communication, if you want to do it, it's easier to do today. You have to efficiently plan this, and that way you can balance as a woman and as an engineer or as an entrepreneur.
Thank you, Pavitra. I've personally been associated with Pavitra for quite some time, and recently, Pavitra, you told me about how difficult it was for you to get that tender with the European Commission. Yeah, can you just give us how you managed to succeed and how?
Yes, the European Commission is a real feather in the hat, and This validated the dream that started 2 years ago that telecom training or education is going to be very important. About 2 years ago, when I was working with my husband in embedded testing, while we were interviewing many candidates for the jobs, I found that there was a huge skill gap in electronics. And we are three partners in Lido Telecom. And we were thinking, instead of just screaming about this quality, let us be proactive and do something in a small way to the society, give back. And frankly, we wanted to just take a franchisee of NIT. Then we realized there are a lot of IT training companies, and we were surprised that though telecom is booming in India, there are very few telecom education providers. And that is how we started evaluating partners, got in touch with Lido of US. And that was how Lido Telecom was born. And this year we were invited to participate by the European Commission in a tender. After the recession, European Commission has a wing, education wing called INFSO, which tries to identify which are the ICT skills required to push European youngsters forward. They are focusing a lot on engineering. I guess given the mammoth turnout of engineers in India and China, they are all relooking at their education system. And telecom has been identified as one of the key sectors in which investment is multiple-fold compared to other technologies. It's a huge growing infrastructure without which we probably cannot move forward in the future. So they are identifying the gap between what their universities are providing and what is required in the industry, in the telecom industry. And they saw that they need to add more curriculum, and they invited about 20 global players in telecom education about 6 months ago, and we went through various levels of filtering, and eventually Lido won the award tender. And presently our curriculum is being evaluated by 100 faculty of European universities so that it can be recommended in and seamlessly integrated into their curriculum. So probably by another 8 to 10 months Lido curriculum will be offered in various universities in Europe.
That really admires Mitra's tenacity, because I know what kind of challenges she has faced. It's not as easy as she's been relating. It's been pretty tough. And the next panel is Bhagirathi, is Vice President, Head, Internet Technologies Center of Excellence, Mindtree Limited. Bhagirathi is a 1990 batch ENC undergraduate from UBC, graduate from UBC, and she's worked on open systems with a career-spanning technology, research and delivery for over 20-year time frame. Multifaceted career handling business, technology delivery and relationship skill as Head of Center of Excellence, Microsoft Technology Practice, delivery units for vertical geography. She was part of the early team that joined Mindtree within days of its announcement, with the intent of building deeper expertise in the internet and .com market. She headed the research labs and subsequently delivered multiple large projects in the internet domain. She's also worked in a variety of customer and domain areas, including services for ISVs, CPG, BFS, and capital markets. She's recently moved back to technology by heading Microsoft Technology Practice last year, and currently she's heading the Center of Excellence Group on Internet Technologies this year. Bhagirathi, a few decades ago, women used to move into the field of art, so they thought that was a girl's profession. That was back. Now you can see there are very many women taking up engineering. How do you think that engineering, given that you've gone from the basic and climbed the corporate ladder, do you think engineering as a career is a great career option? And what do recruiters look for in engineers, and what does the makeup of women help them in getting recruited first, and what challenges they face in going forward in their careers. And how difficult is there a few more questions, because this one, because I'm supposed to ask only one question to a panelist and then throw it over to the audience. So, is there a glass ceiling in climbing up to the top? You are one of the few women who are at the top of the ladder. So, do you think there's something like that?
Thank you, Alice. Thanks. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure being here with you. I moved in from electronics and communication into the software industry very early on. It started off when I was doing my final year project, when I worked at NIC on a project which was supposed to use microwave communication and talk to the farmers, but I got so enthused by the whole software aspect of it and writing programs that could help take away the middlemen in the whole APMC, the farmers, and reaching directly to the urban markets, that I felt that this was one piece of technology that could work directly with end users and make a difference to them very, very quickly. And so after I finished my engineering, I worked with a couple of friends who had computers in their office, and I used to steal time to go try working with them and learned a few languages. At that time in ENC we had only Fortran to learn. So then I learned C and Unix on my own with the help of a couple of friends who I still count as my biggest mentors now. And then found a job in a small product company, an Indian software company, which was developing products for the Indian market. That really gave me a grounding in technology and also in self-sufficiency, because it was a small company, all of us had to fend on our own. There was no specialized training centers where you could learn, and machines that could help you learn anything. So we had to learn most of our things on our own. And that really, I think, was the biggest grounding in self-sufficiency in trying to figure out the things. From there, I moved into a larger company called the Tata University, which was a very technology-centric company. I worked on high-end transaction processing systems, especially in banking, which is very mission-critical applications. And by that time, I saw that the internet was, getting into other area. So I moved into that somewhere around the late 90s. And we worked as the head of the Java and Internet Technologies for a company called DFM, which is now part of the Infosys Group. And then from there I moved into Mindtree, because at that time I was so understruck to hear that there was this company that was going to focus only on Internet Technologies and work primarily with Mindtree. So that's how I moved into Mindtree. Luckily, I think I've been able to get exposure in multiple areas, even within Mindtree, whether it is technology, whether it's research, whether it's working directly with businesses, handling the P&L, and also doing delivery for customers. So this gives me a much larger view of what a company and what the individual groups, the pushes and pulls of each group are, and be able to tune whatever I do to making it work for multiple groups, to make it a win-win for all the groups that are involved.
So, what do you think Mindtree will look for when they recruit engineers?
If you look at the typical aspects of an engineer, regardless of which stream you come from, I think analytical skills, problem-solving skills, communication skills, I think these are the three most common things that you look for in addition to an aptitude to math and science. Right? But if you look at corporate world, I think in addition to being the basic engineering qualities, I think especially in the software industry, in the software corporate world, what we really look for is attitude, the service mentality, because it's all about software services. Finally, it has to make a difference to the end user that you're working with. So the service orientation and an attitude towards that, and I think teamwork. These are the two most other qualities that we look for. And I think especially in the case of women, I think the one thing that will definitely stand out is perseverance and persistence. Okay? If you look at the Indian industry itself, I think number of women moving into engineering is not a problem. You will have 30% or more there. But if I look at my own company, for example, there are about 30% in the software engineer and senior software engineer careers. But as you go up towards management, it becomes 1 by 30%. Right? It just, I can see the number of people who over the career drop out for various reasons. And I think the ability to persevere is the most important thing for any engineer, especially for any women engineer, and not look at the job as something that has to be done, and family is more important. I think your job and your career is also equally important, and you should not feel guilty about wanting to do that and not wanting to compromise on that.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to an HR executive recently, and he said, was a he? He said that the women, young executives are being recruited. They perform very well when they're during the recruitment stage. They do very well, and during the early stages as an employee also, they work very hard, put in extra hours, and they stick to the job, deliver very well. But the moment they move into a family life, things go downstream, and they actually, it's a dread for an HR executive to have a newly married women executive. That's the truth. That's what that's what they have been saying. That's the reason, even if they have good employees in women, they try to avoid women. Is it true? Do you think that that's happened in your company?
I don't think it's a question of avoiding. It's all a question of individual, the person who's working on it, right? So if you could be a newly married woman and be just as interested or more interested than the guy in your team, but it could also be that at various stages you go through issues, right? When you're newly married, there are societal pressures, then you have kids, and then the physical infrastructure that you have makes a lot of difference to you. The support systems that you have make a lot of difference in your life.
Do you think that makes women drop off a career? And how is that a cause for the attrition, or is there any other reason that women are not able to climb up the corporate ladder?
There are two parts to it. One is, of course, the external part, which is about the physical infrastructure and the support systems that are available for women to, let's say, drop off their kids and then come to work. But the other part is also a lot of mental makeup. Okay, all of us somewhere at the back of our mind think that, I think especially the middle class mentalities is all about, I have come up in life to make sure that my kids come up in life. It's not so single stream, right? There is more to your life than just bringing up your kids, right? And not having the guilt about that, and not worrying about your kid getting 2 marks less in some subject, because you could not spend enough time the previous day on the test. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, there's much more you can do than do that.
So there are sacrifices one needs to make.
I don't know about sacrifice. I think sacrifice is a very big word to use. Yeah, it's a very big word to use, and it scares people off, right? When you say sacrifices, they think about themselves being chopped off as a head or something like that. I think it's not as, and everybody makes some, I would say compromises, to be able to do what they want to do. Just thinking about your children is not the end of your life. That I think is the most critical thing, that people have to feel, that they don't have to be guilty about trying to do something else in addition to growing up their kids in the best possible.
So all of us, all the panelists here, all of you have actually made it pretty much in your life. You're doing well in whatever fields you've taken up. Did you face? Do you think there is a glass ceiling that has affected you at any time? Do you think there is some point when it takes that much more effort to go across and succeed because you are a woman?
I think the glass ceiling is pretty much created by ourselves. If you look at the East or West, I feel we have been more liberal. You still don't have a woman president in the US. But we have accepted this. It is okay with us. But I find that most of the women, I was also on the panel of some conducted by Silicon India. I find that women, between balancing work, life and the complex that naturally comes to us, we also stop investing in educating and training ourselves, especially for women in technology. You need to be updated. You need to dedicate some time to improve your skills. You have to be continuously improving your skills too.
Small room in my house because I didn't have anything to business. Mics are in the other panel.
So like she said, as you move up the corporate ladder from 30%, it is 1% of 30%.
Yes.
The reason could be ourselves, You need to take your career and upgrading your skills. That is what an employer looks for. And as far as technology is concerned, it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman. Entrepreneurship is difficult as much for a man as for a woman. In fact, it is more pleasurable for a man. You need to keep updating your knowledge and skills. Nobody, that is irreplaceable. What do you say about that?
I think there are more advantages and disadvantages of being a woman. Let me talk about the advantages first because most people focus more on the disadvantages. I feel that as a woman, when you don't have the financial pressure of bringing the bread home, right? I mean, there is somebody else to take care of it. You can choose to take your risks and do things that you love to do, right? Maybe a man will say, okay, let me find what is the best paying job so that I can keep my family happy. I think as a woman, especially if you have a decently paid husband, you can manage to do what you love to do and not worry too much about the bread part. So that I think is the biggest advantage we have. We don't have the pressure of being making sure that you get the next promotion, making sure that you get the highest paid job in the company or even your level or whatever. But on the other hand, some of these disadvantages are what we create by ourselves, exactly as you said. I have to go home by 5:30, I have to go home and cook, I have my child waiting for me, I can't stay beyond 6. A lot of our jobs have work that has to be done beyond 6. I have customer calls later in the evening, there's no way I can avoid that. If I do not want to be customer facing, I lose out a lot in my career in the process, right? So these are all limitations that we put on ourselves and don't want to take up tough assignments because we think that will hurt something else in our life, in our balanced life or work-life balance piece, and therefore cut short some of those assignments that could give us that much needed exposure and visibility within the company. If we can get out of that and pick up those tough jobs to be done, I think it actually turns in our favor because a woman in a room full of 10 men gets a lot more visibility than the other 10 men. Let's be honest about that, right?
That's true. Uma, you had something to add?
I just wanted to add this point. As far as colleges are concerned, I know that the girls, when they apply, they have to score much higher than the boys so that they get a seat in the college because there are less number of boys. Girls definitely score more. In the process, I think colleges will have more girls in the college than boys. So in order to do that, the girls have to definitely score better. So obviously there are a large number of girls joining engineering colleges. When it comes to entrepreneurship, we are able to manage our homes, we are able to manage our enterprises, and we are able to manage all our social commitments because time is mine. For me to decide that on this day, what is it that I would like to prioritize. Today, I needed to be here. I can actually make time and be here and yet go back and stay back this evening at my work. So I can juggle my time very well. And as an entrepreneur, we need to perfect that juggling act. And very different from corporate world because we can multitask. We are always multitasking. We are always doing 2-3 things at a time. Either sending off a message, something to do with business while we are talking here. There are many things that we can do. And that juggling it and perfecting that art of juggling is very, very important for an entrepreneur. Considering that, I still find that the number of women entrepreneurs in the engineering arena, be it even in the IT sector, is by far very, 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 very low. Very, very low. Considering that you're able to have your own time management opportunity, you're able to manage your home, you're able to manage, we still don't find, I keep saying, where are the women entrepreneurs in the IT sector? Over the years, I've always had this opportunity to talk about, in many forums across, they, ask us, what are the challenges to women entrepreneurship development? And over the years and across the globe, it's the same thing. It's access to finance, it's access to information, it's access to training. These form the major components or major challenges for women to get into entrepreneurship development. Saying that, you're not going to be able to get finance easily, very difficult if you do not have a certain skill sets and you can't set up an enterprise, you don't have access to training, especially from the rural areas. Now take the IT sector or the engineering students. Access to finance is not an issue. You can make a proposal, you can convince your banker, you can convince the venture capitalist. Access to information is not a problem, it's at the click of a button. Access to training is not a problem. When all this is there, why is it that we don't have very few women entrepreneurs in this country? And it's always a question that I like to throw back, to all the audience, that please go back and think, that there is a huge opportunity, get the training in this, a huge opportunity in entrepreneurship development. And I think there is no glass ceiling. It's what your passion and your perseverance to succeed is your ceiling. You want to go to the topmost, you can. You decide to stagnate at a certain level, it's your choice. But there is absolutely no glass ceiling in enterprise development. And as she said, that if you're the one woman that you're entering a room, if nothing, you're offered a chair to sit down and talk, So you have a lot of pluses, I must say, and less of the negatives. But it's a choice that's driven by your own self. And it's your passion that will take you to it. So I think there is no glass ceiling.
Yeah, so do the audience have any questions to our panelists?